Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Story number 1. How Does That Work? Written by 3 ducks in a man suit. So, what? How? Just explain this from the beginning. Each step. How does this work? I took a moment before answering to admire the translation equipment the ethereals used. It conveyed a sense of confusion and curiosity very efficiently, considering that their kind possessed no faces or audible voices at all. Well, I knelt over the antennae, eager to start explaining. First, the microphone captures the sounds that we want to transmit. That's this part right here. Okay? Yeah, that's the one. So, that captures the sounds and turns them into electrical energy. Then, how do I explain this better? Right. Then that electrical energy flows through this antenna, which boosts it, and that generates electromagnetic radiation in the form of radio waves. With me so far? I struggled to perceive any kind of reaction to my explanation. Was he getting it? He? She? Ethereals were gentlest, right? They don't even have physical forms. It just looked like a vaguely bluish splash of light drifting through the air, interspersed with diamond flashes, stars, in a miniature galaxy. They were really quite beautiful. I decided on the spot that this one was female, and I'd call it a she. Why not? So, anyways, any receiver within range of that signal can intercept it with their own antenna, and convert it back into electrical current, which can then be translated back into sound. And in this way, we can communicate over vast distances. I stood back up, hoping the translation software was picking up the beaming smile on my face and conveying accurately what I was saying. Humanity has used this technology for centuries now. We have it down to a very fine science, and it's quite reliable. So, what do you think? It had surprised me to learn that the ethereals had never heard of anything even close to the concept of radio. But I was happy to explain. Mr. Tracy? Her voice was vaguely feminine. I made the right choice. That's, completely insane. The smile froze on my face. Huh? The sparkling lights within the ethereal swirling body jumped and danced. The translator picked up on it and gave her a voice of prickly edge. That's not how the universe works at all. I blinked, words escaping me. It works like, we've been using this since, since the 19th century, I guess. I know that must seem like a blink of an eye to a race as old as yours, but that's practically the dawn of this technology age for us. Mr. Tracy, there is nothing about this radio that should work at all. Compression waves do not work that way. Electricity does not work that way. Electromagnetic radiation does not work that way. I cleared my throat. What exactly was going on here? I thought that the Imperial Ambassador was just interested in learning about Earth's history, but I suspected this when you told me about how your combustion engines in the old worked. The ambassador had calmed down somewhat, but there was a distinct tired edge in the translated voice now. Mr. Tracy, this, radio does not work on electromagnetic waves at all. It's a psychic transmitter. That's simply not possible. I shook my head. Humans aren't psychic at all, I'm afraid. We have no history of it at all. Aside from the occasional crackpot who manages to convince a gullible that they can see the future, or bend spoons, or other similar tomfoolery. I chuckled, my laughter only petering out as lamely when I realized that I was the only one finding anything funny. Mr. Tracy, the ethereal seemed to condense somewhat from her 12-foot-high, indistinct form into something more solid and humanly proportioned. We detected a massive psychic field surrounding your race the moment we found you. It saturates your homeworld so heavily that most psychic species cannot even set foot on Earth without their minds melting from the strain of so much ambient energy. Your technology works. I held my breath, unsure what to think, because you all think it should work. Radios, cars, computers, really, did none of you stop to think for a moment how ridiculous the idea of getting into space by riding an explosion was? I struggled for a response, but found myself stuttering. I was an engineer of almost 20 years. This was nonsense. It was all science, right? 1 + 1 = 2. Right? Did you not wonder why your advancement in technological progress mirrors your growth in population so closely? The more humans there are to believe in something, to contribute their own individual power to the gestalt psychic field you have, the more your species has been able to bend and even break the fundamental laws of nature. Did you really think that you had managed to split the atom by using an explosion? Does that not sound completely insane, even to your ears? Well, when you put it like that, I shuffled my feet, trying to ignore the way my entire worldview and education was being torn apart. And then there was a war of two halves. My head jerked up, the excuses and justifications already in my throat. We didn't start that war. After we won, they spent the next 4 years spinning the propaganda machine to make us out as the aggressors. You really should have had no chance there. A species barely into space-age fighting a centuries-old established empire. Ludicrous. Guns that should not have worked, damaging creatures that should have been immune to such kinetic weaponry in an environment where you should not have been able to stand in, let alone breathe. But you did so anyway, because for some reason you think it was completely normal just to take a piece of your home atmosphere with you to other planets and breathe that. Honestly. It was still difficult to decipher the exact emotions Ethereals felt. But I was learning fast. Just, please do not try to get into many more fights, okay? I nodded, feeling kind of dumb. How the heck am I going to explain the internet? End of story. Story number 2. Humans and Their Pets, written by Armored Cadian. No one is sure when it became universally accepted that the humans are in charge of the galaxy. It just kind of happened. The when may not be clear, but the why is absolutely clear. It probably started back when the first contact between humans and the wider galaxy happened. At the time, while there was a council, it was fairly ineffective, with humans later commenting that it was about as effective as the United Nations. No human has ever elaborated on just what that comment means, though. Power was roughly split between the Kragnos and the Irakians. These two races were the only known sapient predator species on the galactic scale at the time. More had been discovered since then, but at the time, the Kragnos and the Irakians essentially had the run of the galaxy because most of the other species were prey species and terrified of them. The only thing that stopped the council from being effective is that the two dominant species didn't get along at all. Then came the humans. At first, their introduction to the other races was very formal and serious, but that changed when the human ambassador was required to move to the station that housed galactic politics, and he brought his family along, including pets. The significance of this move is that the human ambassador had 2 younger children as well as animals that humans refer to as a cat and a dog. But to the wider galactic community, the dog was not quite a sapient version of the Kragnos, and the cat was the same, but for the Irakians. While the human ambassador had initially kept the animals concealed from public view over the concerns that it would spark an outcry from the ambassadors of the 2 major powers, his children didn't quite understand this and accidentally let the animals loose. Now, no one is quite sure of the exact details behind the next step of the process. After the ambassador's children had went out searching for the missing pets, they came back having seemed to tame members of these 2 species. News spread within 2 races, and there was a sudden demand from members of both of the Kragnos and the Irakians for integration into human households. And so, the humans eventually ended up with both races becoming essentially vassal states to them, and it wasn't even the human race's idea. The only race to oppose this move was also the only race who wasn't in fear of the predators, mostly due to having more fear of the herbivores and the omnivore humans. The carnivore, Kragnos, and the Irakians, that race was a sentient plant known as the followers of the sun. Although the humans dubbed them the Ents, that name stuck. The Ents were concerned that the humans, having pacified the Kragnos and the Akrakians, were removing the only protection the Ents had against the rest of the galaxy. The humans reacted by taking the Ents into their homes as well, and the complaint ceased. The cycle would continue to repeat many times. Fast forward a few hundred years to the present, and you have a human race in charge of the entire galaxy, mostly because every other race has voluntarily become integrated into human family units, in a role similar to how pets were in the past. The humans, when asked about it, will usually shrug and with a look of amusement and say, "Well, I just couldn't say no to that cute face." End of story. The algorithm reckons you should be watching this video next, and I recommend that you should be always watching my video. So, click with energy! And yes, clicking that does help the channel. Thank you very much. I just quickly want to thank the Tier 5 patrons and channel members: Alithia Barkey, Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Albarden Guster, Arcadian, Lord Azrakal, and Joachim Backer.